So, one of the first videos I made for this channel was Why I Hated Art Class, in which I discussed my initial bad experience with art class in college, and it turned into a happy message about experimenting and not expecting people to read your mind when you have a problem. However, that was just the first year of college. Despite ending on a high, everything went downhill in the second year. Here's why. I've enjoyed drawing for as long as I can remember. My mum also loved to draw, so I assume she just threw some pencils at me when I was a baby, and that's how I got into drawing, I don't know. So when you don't know what to do with your life and it comes to picking which subject you want to do at school, everyone just says, pick what you enjoy and/or are good at. And I was like, okay, art it is. I talked about this part of the story in the first video, but I don't expect everyone to watch it or have watched it. Actually, please don't. Also, I'm going to go over some details that were missing in that video but are important to this one. Anyway, one of the first projects I was tasked with in high school art class was to do with nature and stuff, and during this project I discovered I was pretty good at drawing from photographs. I know it sounds kinda dumb to say I just discovered it, like I leveled up and learned a new attack or something, but that's kinda what it felt like. I was decent at drawing from photos, but one day I decided to try adding tone with circular, scribbly motions instead of back and forth in the same direction, and found it made my tones look much more natural. Sometimes little things make a big difference, you know? So, for the rest of the project I decided I wanted to make a sculpture. I decided to base it on the concept of making something unnatural, in my case a stool, look like it would occur in nature. One of the materials available to us was this stuff called mud rock. It becomes moldable with water and it's super fun to mess around with, hence why I wanted to use it for this project. As we were finishing up with that project, my teacher pulled me aside and explained, basically, the next project is going to be about identity, but you could choose still life instead, which would give you a better opportunity to focus on your drawing, which would give you a better grade. Obviously, only hearing better grade, I was like, yeah, sure. And the project was incredibly boring. Watching everyone else make these cool boxes filled with little trinkets that represent them as a person while I was sat there drawing flowers over and over again. Not fun. Not fun at all. But I got through it, I guess. Eventually the school year was coming to a close and I was getting ready to take an extremely long break from drawing when my teacher pulled me aside. So, great work this year, Chip. You're on the right path to a really good grade. However, there's just one thing holding you back. You know this nature project, right? You may have to redo the whole thing. That little stool project? Yep, apparently it wasn't good enough. This whole time. So I redid everything on a ridiculously tight deadline. No more sculptures, no more painting, only drawing. I finished high school with an A in art. Would I have gotten that A if I hadn't switched my sculpture project into a drawing one at the last minute? Who knows? I think about it a lot. Could I have gotten a better grade if my nature project wasn't rushed and also basically the exact same as my still life project? How bad would my grade really have been if I stuck with those sculptures? Unfortunately, anxiety decided that I would not go back to that school after it was over to pick up my sketchbook and the rest of my artwork, so they probably burnt it for warmth by now. But that whole situation basically planted the idea of drawing being the only thing I'm good at and will ever be good at in my head. So then I moved on to college and took art class again. To my initial joy, the first year was heavily based on experimentation with lots of different mediums. Painting, sewing, collaging, we did all the things. And I was naturally very salty, because there was barely any drawing, and I got extremely stressed that I sucked at everything. Of course, it was the first time I'd ever tried most of it. And as a result, I'd get a bad grade because everything I made looked terrible. However, during a class on colour theory, I ended up making a pretty nice painting and realised I did not suck at all the things, only some of them. This basically flicked a switch in my head that made me realise that the point of all this experimentation was to try new things, discover new skills, and step out of your comfort zone. From then on, I did the rest of the work without complaining and actually had fun with it. Due to all the work at the beginning of the year that I didn't do because I thought it was stupid, I finished the first year with a B grade, which was honestly not bad. College grades are obviously higher than the ones that you get in high school, and there was still another year to get my grade up to that A that I was aiming for. However, the second year was very different to the first. The first year was very much, teacher says do this, you do it, rinse and repeat until the end of the year when you'll have to do your own project based on the stuff you've learned. But the second year was almost entirely up to us to do our own projects. There was very little do this, do that from the teacher, and when there was, it was just him trying to push us in the right direction. So I was like, nice. I hated being told what to do all the time last year. Now I get to do basically whatever I want. Time to shove drawing into everything I do. I did experiment, sure, but I made sure that every single project I worked on ended with some kind of realistic drawing. Basically, the way each project worked was that you kind of had to tell a story. Like, you started with an idea, looked at some artists for inspiration, experimented with different ways of executing your idea, including versions based on the artists you studied, and eventually created a final piece, detailing basically how you got from each stage and why. Along with a bunch of critical thinking and improvement stuff, but that was the basic structure, I guess. But in my case, it was like, get an idea, look for artists, create several experimental pieces using a variety of mediums and artist inspirations, final piece is a drawing because it looked the best. One of the projects was to study an art movement of our choosing, and ironically I chose Impressionism because I thought it would give me more opportunities to draw realistically. Basically, Impressionism emerged at a time in which paintings which weren't realistic and painted in a very specific way were looked down on and not considered real art. So, Impressionism was all about breaking away from the standard of art, breaking the rules and doing something original, exploring the idea that art is more than just pretty pictures. I was literally doing extensive research on this concept, and it never clicked. I could never get past this mindset that art is something someone made that looks nice. I remember going on a trip to an art museum. My teacher and I were looking at this huge piece of artwork. It looked like a bunch of shapes of paper stuck onto another piece of paper. My teacher said, "It's wonderful, isn't it?" And I just kind of nervous laughed like, yeah. But in my head I was thinking, it's just a bunch of pieces of paper. In a way, it's kind of understandable that I would have this mindset. I mean, I'd just gotten out of high school in which the whole point was making stuff that looked good in order to get a good grade, and all the stress I went through to do that meant that seeing work that, in my opinion, didn't look as good or take as much effort as mine felt kind of insulting. I wasn't the only person to have this opinion either. Many of my classmates also scoffed at the simplistic works on display at art museums, and I couldn't blame them. You spend 5 years in high school learning that nice looking equals good art equals good grades, then are immediately expected to completely alter your personal definition of art to be practically the opposite of what you thought it was. Suddenly, art is not just about looks, it's about thoughts and feelings, experiences, messages. Who made it? Why did they make it? What's the story behind it? What does it represent? In that sense, the whole concept of art being a school subject is brought into question. How can you teach someone to be an artist when anyone can be one? How do you teach someone to create art if anything can be art? After being top of the class and constantly praised in high school, I thought I was hot potatoes. I actually thought that I knew better than my teacher. He tried to tell me, yo, this progression doesn't make sense. How did you get from here to here, and why does everything turn into an illustration? He told me countless times that experimentation and working with different mediums is what the examiners wanted to see. But I don't know, I guess I just thought my first couple pieces of experimentation were good enough, and the final pieces could just be whatever I want as long as they looked good. So I ended up getting a C on the first project, and a D on the second. Coupled with the B from my first year, that averaged it out to a C. Which, is fine. I passed the class. But as an artist, seeing little to no improvement over 2 years was incredibly embarrassing and depressing. I was so embarrassed that I never went back to pick up my sketchbook and the rest of my project work. Also, I was anxious. After college, I still didn't know what I wanted to do with my life, so I decided to go to a different college for a year and do an art foundation course, which is kind of like a course that prepares you for university, and that was kind of where I realized what I did wrong the previous year. The foundation course was very clear about what you needed to do to reach each grade. You literally had a checklist to fill out, whereas in the art class in my previous college, it was much more vague. I remember having classes where the teacher would try to simplify what the examiners were asking for. Unfortunately, I didn't get a great grade in that college either, but for different reasons. That's for a different video. Art class is super confusing. It's not just like, learn this thing, then do a test on it, like other subjects. So it can be really difficult to figure out exactly what they want from you. I see a lot of videos on YouTube about terrible art teachers who never let you draw anime or express yourself or whatever, and I don't doubt that there are bad teachers out there. In my case, I feel like my first year teacher could have given us a rundown of what we would be doing and why, and my second year teacher could have conveyed better what I was doing wrong, but it was also on me for not asking when I wasn't sure of something, and often outright ignoring the advice my teachers gave me. It's tricky because, to most of us, art is very important to us, and it is often our main outlet for expressing ourselves. So being told that you have to mold it in a certain way for a good grade is difficult. And it's difficult to accept that you can't just get those grades by making a nice drawing. So just don't be afraid to ask for help. Don't be afraid to tell your teacher that you have no idea what's going on or a piece you made got a lower grade than you expected. It's their job to teach you, and in most cases they want their class to have good grades, so it's in their best interest to help you out. I just wish I wasn't so egotistical when it came to art class in college. It was so dumb. But, it's in the past now, and I've learned a lot. And if I'm able to give at least one person a better art class experience because of it, I'll be happy. Also, go get your work after you leave school. If you're anxious, take a friend or ask your parents, just don't leave it, because if you do, in 5 years when you want to look back at the progress you've made, you'll regret it. So, if you enjoyed this video, please consider leaving a like, it's more helpful than you think. And as always, thank you for watching, and I hope you have a great day.